Good morning and welcome back to another segment of the fascinating world of birds. Today I'm joined with a very familiar face, Chanith Wijeratna, who is our very own bird enthusiast and medical student. Welcome, Chanith.
Thank you again for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, Chanith, what bird species will you be discussing with us today?
Today we'll discuss another favourite, and one that actually took me quite a while to find myself, the Easten Choel.
And can you describe to us a bit about their appearance, please?
So like many birds, the Easten Choel exhibits what's called sexual dimorphism, which is a very fancy way of saying the male and the female look different. The male is a rich, glossy bluish black, with a bright red eye and a sort of ivory white beak. The female and the young, on the other hand, look almost completely different, with a sort of blackish head, but otherwise the body is a sort of light tan, with lots of barring and speckling.
I see. Now, whereabouts in Melbourne would we be able to locate these birds?
Well, some time ago, the answer would have been essentially not at all. However, with global warming, like many species, the Easten Choel has sort of steadily advanced southward. Nowadays, it's a pretty regular spring migrant, and most of our suburbs, or most of our sort of general areas, have at least one resident choel.
Now, is the impact of global warming a positive or negative effect on these birds?
Now, on one hand, for this particular species, it has allowed it to sort of march its range southward. However, it cannot be understated that global warming has a very severe impact on species that can't do that. For instance, take the orange-bellied parrot, which I believe I mentioned in another segment. This is a very rare bird nowadays, partially due to habitat destruction, but if the climate warms, it's already pretty much as far south as it gets, being a Tasmanian and Victorian endemic. It can't go further south. It has nowhere to extend its range to. And so, what might be a positive, theoretically, for some species, is a much more severe negative for others. And it should be noted as well that even when these species are extending their range southward, it could be argued that with some species that are doing that, it's not really that good of a thing. For instance, I'm on a bit of a tangent here, but the pied butcher bird is a bird that's normally found only in northern Victoria. It's a large carnivore that takes smaller birds. Now, there have occasionally over the years, more so again in recent years, with the sort of steady march onward of global warming as we speak, been records of this normally very northern bird in Victoria in inner Melbourne. Now, what might happen to our smaller species if a carnivore that eats them becomes established when it wasn't there before? Obviously, it sort of messes with the ecosystem, doesn't it? And so, yes, on one hand, it has allowed this species to expand south further than it might have in other years. On the other hand, the devastating impact it has on other species should not be understated.
Well, that was a very detailed explanation, Chanith. I'd like to talk about the Easten Choel's diet now.
Well, the Easten Choel is mainly a frugivore. It really, really likes fruiting figs, and for that reason, where there's a fig in Melbourne, there often will be a choel that decides to make it home in spring. A particularly good example is, I believe, down Moreton Bay Drive. I might be misquoting that slightly. In Berwick, there's a single very large fig that for a few years now has played host not only to a channel-billed cuckoo, another sort of relative of the choel that also likes figs quite a lot, but also to a regular choel. Now, this is actually both good and bad for everyone living around the choel. You see, the choel has an extremely loud call, and it really loves doing that call extremely early in the morning. Think 4 a.m. Now, you can imagine how having a choel decide that it's time to set up shop at 4 in the morning in suburban Melbourne doesn't earn it many favours.
Yep, 100%. And there you go, for our viewers in Berwick, make sure to keep an eye out near your figs and an ear out for the Easten Choel's call. Well, Chanith, that brings us to the end of our segment today. Thank you so much for joining again and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you for having me.
See you again next week as we discuss yet another fascinating bird species.